Oh my goodness. We have a Sat Chats first today for all you Satillionaires. Lucola from New Zealand listened to the show, jumped on satchats.com, booked his slot on the show, and he told us all about his Bitcoin journey, about going down the rabbit hole of learning that Bitcoin is money and nothing else is, jumping into Jeff Booth, and eventually unlocking the spiritual layer of Bitcoin. You guys are going to want to strap in for this. And when you're done listening, you're going to want to listen to his music as well, because who needs music from Fiat Clown World when you can have music from Bitcoiners? We can't wait for you to listen to this one. Here's Lucola. Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. With Sat Chats, we are building the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center to serve as your gateway to generational wealth. So if you are new to Bitcoin, we want to chat about sats with you. Head to satchats.com and grab your slot in the studio today. I'm your host, Stuart, Bitcoin Maxi, who wears prescription sunglasses to protect you and your loved ones from my burning hot Bitcoin laser eyes.
And I'm your co-host, Chris, founder and CEO of Ithaca Hummus, proud multi-coiner and Bitcoin smash buyer.
So we want you to smash the like and subscribe the same way Chris smash buys Bitcoin. Hit us with the 5 stars on Spotify. Today we've got our new friend Lucola, who is a listener of the show out there in Auckland, New Zealand. And the fellow did exactly as we wish for all of you Satillionaires out there. He hopped on satchats.com and he grabbed his slot on the studio.
So great.
He did it. And we're so excited to talk to Lucola because he gets Bitcoin. He's got an incredible Bitcoin story. His favorite Bitcoiner is Jeff Booth, so we already know this guy is absolutely based.
Oh, my God.
But before we get into that story of yours, help our Satillionaires out there get to know you a little bit.
Lucola is the name, and from New Zealand, as you say. And I've been in Bitcoin since about 2017 and did the classic. Everyone started talking about it. And so I jumped on board with the old ex-wife. I was living in LA at the time. She had the money. I didn't have any, so she threw down. Actually, we had gotten some money for our wedding, and we decided to put it all into Bitcoin and Ethereum at the time because that one was fresh. I went through that whole journey of just like watching the price all the time, and then it does the big crash, and then I was like, "Ooh, gross!" What I was clearly lied to and getting carried away with this thing that's clearly dead and everything, and then a few years later, noticed it had bounced back, and that's when I started. I think it was actually the start of 2022, I started really paying attention and, just went down the rabbit hole. And I had moved back to New Zealand. I was living in LA for 5 years and then moved back to New Zealand at the start of the pandemic because I play music and DJ and stuff like that. And all that had kind of dried up. And so I moved back here, and then I was just intrigued. I think like most people, I could always tell that something was wrong, but I was going down that left-wing path of trying to, like Bernie Sanders and trying to help. You want everyone to kind of be looked after and to actually, get by and have. I cared about the common man and everything, but I could tell that something deeper in the system was broken. And like jumping back to, I'd always follow American elections, and I remember I think it was the second time that Obama got in actually, and he was arguing with Mitt Romney, and I was just like, what are we doing? Like, you can start to tell that everything is just two sides arguing about something, and it's just, it's just basically a front for them to kind of like get elected, and then the same problems carry on. So anyway, in 2022, I started exploring a bit more what was going on, started buying a few books, and just went down the podcast journey, and then got a bit obsessed, you might say. And at the whole time, I was just putting in little bits of money to Bitcoin, and still at that point, some of the other ones, and then slowly started to just see the scammy nature of the other coins, and get more obsessed with the Bitcoin philosophy and almost the spiritual nature of it, and feeling, and most importantly, shining a light on the corrupt system that you could say is like nobody in particular's fault, but it's just where we've ended up. But it's the incentives are all warped and everything, and so I just became focused on that, and then started telling all my friends at parties and stuff, and they were like, "Oh, here we go again, shut up," and it just ranting and raving about taking every conversation back to Bitcoin. And so far, I've managed to orange pill one friend, which is pretty impressive. But he's in the same boat as me, where we're both pretty broke musicians, and all our friends that are kind of richer and doing well, they want nothing to do with it. So it's quite hilarious, because the other day he sent me a message saying, I had a really bad chat with my family about Bitcoin, and it didn't go well, and it was a bad time. And I was like, isn't it hilarious that you and I are the two people giving financial advice? Like, I wouldn't take it from us either.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy to once I got it, it was all I could think about. It was all I could talk about. I was starting to see, like you said, that things are not set up for the common man. I mean, you can even have, that quote unquote left wing approach where you want the common man to be able to succeed. And so you think we should centralize things. We should create programs to support them. And
tax the rich.
I'm all about that. But interestingly enough, hey, how about we hook them up with actual money? What happens if we pay them in actual money and allow them to work hard and save in a way that doesn't get destroyed over time? Like, what if Bitcoin is for left wingers? What if Bitcoin is for right wingers? Bitcoin is for savers. Bitcoin is for spenders. Bitcoin is for friends. Bitcoin is for enemies.
Totally. And I think because people often take it back to what about welfare? What about looking after people who are, struggling? But I don't think they realize how deeply their money's been debased. And I always think people talk about the 2 or 3% inflation, which it clearly is a lot more than that. But even apparently someone mentioned on a podcast that was decided by New Zealand in the late 80s or early 90s, the 2%, the arbitrary 2%. But even if it was that, which it's not, but that's still compounding interest on prices that are getting each year so crazy more expensive. And I don't think we can kind of understand if prices did fall to their kind of actual utilitarian kind of value, how everyone, as Jeff Booth says, if people wouldn't need to, you wouldn't even have to work 5 to 10 hours a week if you wanted. And I feel personally there'd be a lot of philanthropy, and we're led to believe that no one will look after each other because the current system doesn't support that. But I think that I know it's a long shot and it will take a while to get there probably, but I just think a lot of we'd have a much better, fairer world, and we wouldn't need government support to help people who are struggling, because things would be so much more affordable.
So I want to kind of dive into that Jeff Booth aspect with you, that deflationary aspect, and this world where Bitcoin is fixing everything, right? Fix the money, fix the world. We all know it, the ones who have gone down the rabbit hole. But before I do, I want our Satillionaires to learn a little bit about your learning journey, right? Because we all go to these different places to learn about Bitcoin. I spent time with Chappie, of course. I read the Bitcoin Standard. I started listening to the boys over on Simply Bitcoin, Natalie, Brunel, What Bitcoin Did, what type of resources, and obviously Chris would say the only resource you need now is Sat Chats, but we're still early. What was your learning journey like? Did you learn from friends, books, podcasts, YouTube? Like, how'd you figure it out?
Yeah, it started with, I think the first one that I remember having a chat with both my brothers, and we were like, okay, we're going to get into this. It was January 2022 or so, to get into it properly. And I think the first one I stumbled upon was like a group of bros, which turned out to be Robert Breedlove and a few other, that guy John, someone. They were all hanging out with their hats on backwards and like, yeah, brother. And then they had Jordan Peterson, and he was he's got a strange reputation, but he was asking good questions and seemed quite inquisitive. And then I bounced on to him interviewing Saifedean Moose, and that obviously I started sharing that with my brothers. And then I got into Michael Saylor, and then it was the rest. It was all downhill from there. But yeah, and totally, as you say, like Simply Bitcoin. Natalie Brunel, I think, is great because it's nice to have a woman's perspective, and also just like she cares about those things that, yeah, a lot of my friends and my world care about as well. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners as well care about, but it seems to be more of a, often it stems from more of a like, how can I make more money, and like everyone can fight for themselves. And yeah, so I think obviously it's still early days, but I'm glad that there is this world of resource out there. But yeah, I think we still have to. It's still going to be an interesting battle between the altcoin world, but I have heard Michael Saylor say like that they can coexist and the rising tide lifts all boats and stuff. And sometimes I do think that the altcoins are almost like a coat of armor for Bitcoin, because it's proved that the idea can't be put back in the box. It's like the idea is out there in the world, and it's replicable. Like can be repeated in so many different shapes or forms, so it almost hides the genius of Bitcoin for people who would potentially be trying to stop it. So I try to just think of it in a positive light like that.
I did hear something similar today, Lucola, where they talked about how I think it might have been Opti on Simply Bitcoin, but he talked about how he's not pumped that the altcoins are fixing to be included in this strategic digital reserve, but from a positive perspective, it gives something for the regulators to go after. It's like, hey, go chase these altcoins, go regulate them, go shut them down, give Bitcoin even more time to quietly accumulate even more computing power, even more security, even more decentralization, so that by the time the powers that be pick their head up and finally realize that their altcoin journey is over and they need to focus on Bitcoin's like, good luck, dude. Good luck, right? You won't be able to stop Bitcoin. So you mentioned that your favorite Bitcoiner is Jeff Booth. Talk to us and our Satillionaires a little bit about why you like him. What did you learn from him? How do you feel when you approach Bitcoin from his deflationary perspective?
Yeah, I think I really like his general attitude and spirit, and you can tell he's a genuine kind of, and kind of more of an emotional pansy boy like myself. No, just kidding. But he's just got the sweet spirit. But then he'll say some stuff, and you just be like, what? And you have to re-listen to it a million times. And I definitely, I think back in 22, I just kept listening to him over and over, and I got his book and stuff. And it's all written pretty simply, and he repeats himself so much, and he's got his cute little stutter and everything. But then just the technology being deflationary thing, and it's so hard to see that from a fiat perspective, because you're like, no, everything goes up. Like, you can't understand it until it makes perfect sense that the pieces of paper are fake, but it's so hard to explain that, because and the same way that he says whoever it was, I forget, Copernicus or whoever, like, once someone points out, it's really got an Emperor's New Clothes vibe to me. Like, someone points out that this whole system is broken and twisted, but it's the system that everyone relies on, and everyone puts at least 40 hours of the week of their energy into fighting to get these pieces of paper. And so I think it helps how he repeats these things, but I think he's so far ahead, and kind of, even like, I'm interested in his ego death company, but seeing how he kind of claims to already be living on a Bitcoin standard, and I think that's quite inspirational, and I'd love to. But when I try to break out my Lightning wallet at the local TAB or sports pub, they won't have a bar of it. but I think he's great, and he's just an inspiration. Whereas sometimes some of the other people, even Michael Saylor to a degree, is quite focused on capital and saying things like never sell your Bitcoin. I feel like, I think it's all going to happen naturally. And another interesting thing I learned was, because you learn about money being a store of value, medium of exchange, and then unit of account. But I had never learned until kind of recently that it has to happen in that order as well. And so I like the idea that I think Bitcoin is inevitable, and it's at the moment it's at that store of value phase. So there's almost no point arguing about whether it will become a medium of exchange or not. I feel like it will happen naturally on that second layer, and but I just I would like to fast forward that, and I like how Jeff Bezos is doing it now, and how he disagrees with Michael Saylor on, like, never sell your Bitcoin, and for me personally, I would love to. Because I argue even with my friend who's now into Bitcoin about this, that he's like, oh, but you wouldn't want to sell it because it's going up in value, but that's still a kind of a fiat mindset, and the penny dropped for me, or the Satoshi dropped, when I was like, if, like, just a few months ago, because I did actually do, I've got a web design company, and I made a website for a Bitcoin educator down here in Queenstown, and we met on the Orange Pill app, and we just chatted, and it was a really great experience, and he paid me in Satoshis, and I was like, if I could get payment in sats, and then pay for things in sats, then you've stepped out of the game. And I know that's an obvious thing, but, like, even my girlfriend or people I talk to can't, but they're like, when are you going to turn it back into, when are you going to sell it though? Like, that mindset is still about selling it, but if you can actually step out of the game and pay for the money you're getting paid, and also that money is increasing in value on and off all the time with volatility, but it's getting stronger. So of course you try to save as much as you can, but you still spend what you need, and as it's also been said in some other books, it fixes that whole consumerism of just buying as quickly as possible because your money's losing value. So I really do feel that it can reset this whole twisted world that is so beautiful in so many ways, but has just been taken down the wrong path, unfortunately, and which is why it's good that the aliens came and pretended to be Satoshi Nakamoto and gave us Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah, and we also were talking on a show last week that what if Satoshi is a time traveler who came back in time, made Bitcoin, mined 1 million Bitcoins, and then just went back to the future, and now he is an absolute frillionaire. You know what I mean? Because he just sat on his Bitcoin for like 200 years, right? Well, so this is really interesting, Lucola, because the show we did just before you, Chris was vibing with this guy because he was a buy, borrow, die type. He was on that first step. Bitcoin is a store of value. Don't sell it. Use it as collateral. Go get some crypto with it to exchange into a stable coin and then some fiat or whatever. And I feel like you and I are going to be vibing today here, Lucola, because I'm a safety maxi. And for me, I thought it's interesting that you said that you realize that Bitcoin is going to go in that order. First, it's a store of value, then it becomes a medium of exchange, and then a unit of account, right? And Bitcoin is kind of interesting because it was almost like a medium of exchange in the very beginning, and people are like, "Woo, check it out!" And then they realized it was so valuable that it kind of is now in this store of value space, right? And I tell people all the time, Bitcoin is money, but it's such good money. It's the best money that anyone's ever seen that people go, huh, this must be an asset. This must be like gold. This must be a store of value. And it is, but it is also money. It is digital gold, yes, but it's digital cash. And my approach to Bitcoin is this: I don't want to get upside down in fiat clown world. I don't want to take out a loan that then comes due and I've overextended myself, or I'm living on credit, or I'm not saving, I'm just spending, like, hey, I'm going to swipe my credit card now and then I'll pay for it over time. Like, Bitcoin has turned me into a saver. I went from just spending. I never spent anything, but whenever my wife and kids said, "Hey, can we get this?" Sure, whatever. I'll just make more of it later. I'll always be able to out earn my stupidity. I'm always going to be employed. I'll always have a paycheck. It's fine. Bitcoin has changed me to, hang on, let's save. Let's save some money. Let's wait for something that's truly valuable, and then we'll buy it, or we'll go on that vacation or whatever. But I don't need these doodads at Target when I'm checking out, because they make you go through a big fat line of random stuff to buy, like sodas and gum, to just kind of like add to your and I do believe that Bitcoin is digital cash in addition to being digital gold. And I'm exploring the Lightning layer now. And for me, if I've got, let's say I'm a satillionaire, I've got 1 million sats, I've done it, I've meet the challenge of sat chats, I've become a satillionaire, and it only costs 7 sats for coffee. Well, I'm gonna zap 7 sats at Starbucks to get that coffee, right? I personally am not going to take my 1 million sats and go get a loan against it in fiat and then, allow the appreciation of Bitcoin to go up and then come back later and pay off. Like, I'm just going to have money and I'm going to spend money and then I'm going to save money. Then I'm going to spend money and I'm just going to add value to the world, and it's going to be fine.
Yeah. And do you think at some point, I mean, I've never heard people really talk, but that you'd leave a certain amount of sats on your Lightning wallet, and maybe even you could, like, in the future, ideally, you could get paid in Bitcoin to your main wallet, and then like, instead of transferring to your savings account, you'd almost do the opposite, like transfer some spending money to your Lightning wallet every week, a certain amount of sats, and then if you could use that, mostly you could, obviously it's not quite there yet, but yeah, that would be a good way of just spending on your weekly needs, and then making sure most of your money was kind of being saved. That could work.
It could definitely work. And I'm learning more about the Lightning layer now, because all of our guests, when they pick the sats, we pay them through the Lightning network, because it's fast and the transactions are smaller, or the transaction fees, right, are smaller. So it's kind of a way to get them their Bitcoin instantly. It's also a way to kind of backdoor them into the Lightning network. So they're like, hey, I got 50,000 sats on my Lightning, wallet, and maybe they'll, zap you for your music, right? And you'll get all the Lightning channels connected. You'll get the routing in place to where more and more people can use it, because it's almost like the world is building its own payment network. Like, Satoshi created Bitcoin, or discovered Bitcoin, and basically gifted this new money to the people, right? And now Lightning is coming on top, and it's kind of like we're creating our own payment network on top of our own money. And it's going to take some time. I think for now you still have to interface with the fiat system, even though Jeff talks about, building a parallel world to eventually replace the current world. Like, we still kind of have to hop between them.
Yeah, for sure.
So I tell you what, you also mentioned, you came into Bitcoin early in 2017 with your ex-wife and your wedding money. And then when it quote unquote crashed, right? I love that you said, "Ooh, gross." Ew, gross. And you got out of it, or you sold it, but then you came back in 2022 in earnest, and went down the different rabbit holes and learned about Bitcoin. But I also heard you talk about how you've almost kind of moved beyond into the spiritual aspect of Bitcoin, or maybe it's kind of energy juju. So, like, what do you mean by that?
I think, as I was saying, just the idea that, and because I get quite into like listening to a bit of Eckhart Tolle and Joe Dispenza and people like that, and I feel like there is this spiritual awakening kind of going on to a degree, and I think people are just kind of a bit sick of legacy media and all these, like, going to protest and fighting against wars, and they just keep getting worse. And I think people are waking up a little bit. And yeah, I think I heard people like Thomas Stromlight, was it? Who made those sweet little videos and about, Bitcoin being spiritual money. And yeah, there's a few other documentaries. That one Natalie Brunel was on. And I came from a Christian upbringing and stuff, but I kind of turned my back on it when I was a teenager, and I wanted to do the fun things in life. But I just see this open and fair system as being able to right those wrongs, and yeah, I kind of feel like it just gives you the chance to focus on other classic things that Bitcoiners tend to get into, like a little bit of physical fitness and a bit of eating well. And I just notice it resets because you're not focused the whole time on it. Because I'm exactly like you. Like I took pride in the fact that I would spend my last dollar, and I was just like, oh, life usually kind of somehow haphazardly works out for me, and I'll just like spend all my money at the pub and like, just completely get go down to zero again and then wait till you get some more money. But I could see that this reset kind of meant that you start saving little bits. And this year I've stopped. I managed to stop drinking, which was for me a big one because I do love an alcoholic beverage. But I realized it was kind of making me all a bit foggy and sloppy when I was trying to do business stuff the next day, and I just crack a beer at midday. And so yeah, a few little things like that I've just tried to focus on, a bit more meditation and exercise in the mornings, and getting my life a little bit more on track in my mid-40s. And and doing the music and everything. So yeah, I feel like, long story short, I feel like Bitcoin just gives you that breathing space that I've never had. That I know that even if I didn't work for a few months and I had to spend some Bitcoin, I'd be okay. So kind of gives you a bit more freedom. And it's like in other things in life, when you're a bit too needy, it has a repellent effect sometimes, and like it kind of alleviates that neediness, because you can be safe with your Bitcoin, with your sat stack, and just get on with life. But then of course you still want to work and create value. But yeah, I found it a bit difficult, because sometimes in this last few months, because I don't work a regular job, like every time I get a small bit of money come through, I'll obviously want to buy the Bitcoin, and then the next week I might have to spend that Bitcoin, and it can feel kind of depressing, or like a bit of a bummer, especially if the price went down. But like, that's just the world that you live in. And yeah, if I had more of a fiat job, I guess I'd just put in a small percentage every week, and so it wouldn't be a worry. But that's the risk you take, like running a business. And sometimes you get paid a lot, and then sometimes you get nothing for a few months. And yeah, that's just the hustle, I guess.
Well, I love that message, Lucola, because Bitcoin teaches us that hard work pays off over time. And we really haven't been able to grow up in that kind of world. At least I haven't, right? I mean, we've lived in a world where our money gets weaker and weaker over time. None of us are going to retire at age 65. We might as well spend it now, because we could get hit by a bus. There's absolutely none that's going to get moved on to my kids. So, let's just go ahead and take some vacations now. Let's kind of live our retirement in little bits and bobs as we work, because we ain't never going to stop. But with Bitcoin, it does give you a sense that if you put in the work, the proof of work, then it's going to pay off. It's like I tell my kids, want the perk, do the work. So you get your money right, and then you start thinking, well, I should eat a little bit better, because that'll pay off too. I should work out a little bit more, because that'll pay off too. And for me, it's like safety, and talked about, where it takes me from wanting things now to being able to wait for them later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of lowers that time preference, so to speak. So I kind of like that spiritual aspect, but I also can relate to your idea of like having to stack some sats and then sell them back off. Maybe it doesn't feel that great, right? But quite frankly, if you're treating Bitcoin like money, I mean, so what, dude? I'd rather stack sats and sell sats than stack fiat and use fiat, because one is good money and one is not good money. And you may not stack or sell off optimally with the different fluctuations in dollar terms, but that's just in dollar terms.
Yeah, sometimes I catch myself still coming from that fiat mindset, but it's a journey.
Yeah. And I think over time, it will get easier for guys like you and me to use Bitcoin as digital cash. I mean, we do live in a world right now where they're like, hey, hang on, Bitcoin is not money. It's like an asset, or, if you sell it at a profit, you got to pay some capital gains or whatever. And I'm like, what? like, I don't ever have to pay tax on using dollars, and I'm just using it as money. But we saw recently that the Czech Republic, or at least Prague, I guess, has passed some laws that say, hey, if you hold Bitcoin for 3 years, when you sell it for fiat currency, you don't need to pay any taxes at all on it. And eventually, and I think here in America, there's a senator who's trying to make it so that anytime you sell Bitcoin and convert it into less than $600 worth of US bucks, there's no tax on it, right? So I think over time, it'll be easier for you and for me to take whatever fiat we get and turn it into Bitcoin, and then turn that Bitcoin back into fiat when we need it. And then even further down the road, we won't even have to convert it at all.
Yeah.
So let's recap the conversation with Lucola. The big surprise is that Lucola listened to Sat Chats. He went to satchats.com. He grabbed his slot in the studio. It's literally beautiful.
Amazing.
So Lucola, you're number 32, and you will go down forever as number 32, Lucola, the first satillionaire to get himself on the show. Literally, I'm gonna punch a hole in a wall after this because I'm so pumped up. But Lucola, he is from New Zealand, musician, some graphic design as well. Spent some time in LA with his ex-wife at the time. They took their wedding finances, they put it into Bitcoin in 2017. They watched it go downwards. They said, "Ooh, gross."
Gross.
This is, uh-oh. And they sold it off. And then it wasn't until 2022 when Lucola decided to pick it back up and just started stacking sats, really, is what I'm understanding, and going down the rabbit hole. And we love that. If you don't know a lot about Bitcoin, go ahead and stack some sats, buy $50 a month and start learning about Bitcoin. So Lucola, he went to Jeff Booth. Jeff Booth's book is called The Price of Tomorrow. He went to the Jordan Peterson interview of Saifedean Ammous. And of course, Saifedean always leads you to the Bitcoin Standard. Podcasts like Natalie Brunel, and now hopefully Sat Chats. Let's roll. And Lucola's conviction has gotten to a point where he is trying to adopt a full-on Bitcoin standard and take that income as a musician, get it into Bitcoin, and pull it back out when he needs it until we live in a world where he doesn't even need to pull it back out, right? So, Lucola, we are going to make you an offer here in a minute, but before we do, I'm going to taste some Ithaca hummus here with the CEO and co-founder in your honor. And I'm going to serve as your surrogate taste buds today. So we're going to try the roasted red pepper. So let's have a bite here. Cheers, Lucola.
Great.
Dude.
Wow.
Red pepper for days.
So good.
It's almost like pimento cheesy.
I agree.
A little bit of spice or something, but like not a lot.
No.
Just little notes of it.
Yep.
Dude, I would love that on like a turkey sandwich, dude.
Yeah, but
right?
would you eat your way out of a bathtub full of it though?
Woo! What do you think if he comes back in 9 months and we literally like full YouTube brain rot mode? We like fill a tub.
Yeah.
And you alone and like put him in it. What would you watch that?
You got to do it. Yeah, I would, but you guys would get canceled off the internet.
I don't think we'd get canceled if we didn't do it.
Oh man, dude. Well, that is delicious, and we can't wait for you to fly halfway around the world to come be with us. You are absolutely the man.
Yes.
Help us understand in our Satillionaires, where can we go to listen to your music? Where can we find you? How do we find you on the Orange Pill app? What about your graphic design? Where do you want to send people?
Yeah, cool. Well, I've got I'll just show you 1 second. Got my record here that I just got released. There it is.
Yeah.
There she blows. That's me and my synthesizer music. And I'm going to when I do my little tour, I'm going to be selling my record for sats. So yeah, look out for me there. And but yeah, you can listen on Spotify, Lucola, and you can at the moment you can purchase the record for Fiat dollars. Just look at it's on a Bandcamp. My record label's in Germany called Sound Essence. Yes, and I'm on Instagram as Lucola Bang. So that's pretty much where I operate.
Okay, and we will put notes. We'll put links in the show notes for everyone who wants to jam on some Lucola action. Right? Forget music created by Fiat Clown World. Listen to some Bitcoin music, dude. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's go. So let's make Lucola his offer here.
All right, Lucola. So we appreciate your time coming to the show today to talk with us about sats and share your experience with our audience. And so in exchange for your time, we'd like to offer you the choice between $50, which we've got right here in this fancy new frame. You probably haven't seen this yet, but that's a new addition here in the studio. Stuart, if you don't mind holding that, since you're not actually.
I can hold it now that it's in a protective case. I couldn't touch it earlier.
Okay, so $50 or $50 in sats. And right now, the price of one Bitcoin is $90,400, which converts to 1,106 sats per dollar. So I'm going to say 1106 times 50. That is 55,300 sats or $50.
Yep, sounds great. I'll take the calculator, please. No, that's brilliant. Very generous of you guys.
Okay, 55,300 sats.
Let's do it. Take the calculator, dude.
Also,
this thing is like an art.
There's no way that I could get that money. Like, it would take about 7 different payment rails for me to get it, whereas this one you can just flick it over to my address.
There you go.
Far away in New Zealand,
Yeah, think about getting this $50 to Lucola in New Zealand, y'all. For real. Come on. Give me a break. We're going to zap him with the sats. All right, Lucola, you are the man. That brings us to 29 guests who have chosen the sats and 3 who have chosen the cash. So we appreciate you putting some weight on the sats side of the equation for us. We want to absolutely take fiat money to school and show the people that if you sit down with them and chat about sats with them, 99% of the time they're going to choose sats. So if you've made it this far, exchange your value for our value. Hit that like and subscribe on YouTube. Hit us in the comments below what you thought about this episode. 5 stars on Spotify. Share it out there with your friends and family. Help us spread this signal so we can get to 999 plus 1 subscribers on YouTube. That will unlock a live show Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Lucola will be in the chat. He's going to get up in the middle of the night to come hang with us, y'all. And you can too. Just help us get there as quickly as possible. So, last thing we'll say to you, remember, Sat Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. Also, our guests' views are their own. So, we will see you on the next one. Thanks so much, Satillionaires.